Welcome, fellow trailblazers, all of you. Today, we are launching a 3-year capital campaign to raise $7 million. I just want to get that out there for you to think about. The presence of all of you in this room, some 150 strong, is already an indication to me, and I think others on the various committees that have been working on this, that this congregation is more than willing to accept the challenge and to get on with it. And so we shall. But we got to start someplace, and no better place than with our pastor, Scott Ramsey, and the invitation. Scott?
It is extremely exciting to be here today. This is an exciting project. It's a long overdue project, and it's wonderful to be here. Thank you all for coming out for lunch today. Let us gather our hearts in prayer. Gracious and almighty God, you are the source of all that is. You are also the goal of all that is. We came from you, and we are returning to you. And we give you thanks and praise for the privilege of being part of your church here on the earth, seeking to be faithful to you, seeking to serve the vulnerable poor of the world, and seeking to gather people towards you and towards each other. We ask that you would be at work among us this afternoon as we watch, listen, and talk. And we ask that you would use this time for the strengthening of your church, for the upbuilding of your kingdom, and everything for your glory. All of these things we pray in Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you, Scott. There is some kind of excitement in the air. This week, people have asked them, well, where's the money going to come from for this? Well, from all over. And I have to tell you, this past week, we received pledges, unexpected and unsolicited, from various sources. 3 came from former members. If you want to know about the connection that people feel to Lewinsville Church, you need to look at that kind of statistic. 3 pledges have already come in from former members. 2 friends of current members have already said, we've been there and visited and we want to be part of this as well. So they've sent it. And 1 anonymous gift from way off there, California. Amazing. We'll have a question and answer session later, but you will also hear us answering many questions, I hope, throughout the presentation. I'll start with one that no one has been able to answer as yet. I still can't give you an answer to it, but I can give you some advice. The question is, what are we going to look like in 10 years? What are we going to look like in 20 years? Can you give us an idea of what the future is for Lewinsville Church? I've struggled with that for a long time. And finally, I came up with the greatest answer in the world, at least for me. To see the future, you need to look to the past. You need to look and see what we have done here at Lewinsville Church and are doing today. But particularly what all those who came before us who didn't know each other but were committed to the Lewinsville Presbyterian Church did. That's our future. If you want to see our past, our future, look to our past. Get a good seat, turn your seat around if you need to, and get ready to watch this short history of the modern Lewinsville Presbyterian Church.
On a snowy Sunday in January 1847, Lewinsville Presbyterian Church was dedicated. 17 hardy members were on hand to celebrate the charter they had received in October 1846 from the Winchester Presbytery. For most of the 19th century, the membership, consisting mostly of local dairy farmers, varied from a few dozen to less than a score, but they were a faithful few. Somehow, the members were able to seed 3 additional Presbyterian churches in the surrounding villages: Vienna Presbyterian in 1871, Ballston in 1872, and Falls Church in 1873. Fortunately for the struggling church, expenses did not completely overwhelm their budget. This early 20th century ledger indicates firewood, oil, and wine were the major recurring expenses. And with the support of the presbytery, they pushed on. In 1939, when the small congregation was financially able to call their first full-time pastor, they chose a recent graduate of Princeton Seminary, Dr. Franklin Gillespie. During Dr. Gillespie's decade of leadership, the World War II generation returned home, bought cars, and began to build homes in Washington's Northern Virginia suburbs. By the mid-1950s, the modern Lewinsville Church was well established. Indeed, it was bursting at the seams. The chapel that had served them well for more than 100 years was no longer able to accommodate the congregation and its expanding mission. In late 1955, the chapel was disassembled to make way for a new and larger sanctuary. And in early 1956, construction began. The new church, when completed, provided room for more than 300 parishioners in the pews. The empty sanctuary, moments before the first service was held in the spring of 1956. By 1960, it was clear that Dunham Hall, the education building erected in 1929, was no longer serving our needs. Dunham Hall, almost 30 years old in 1959, was sold to Lewinsville member Bayard Evans for $1 and moved to his farm property adjacent to the church. Immediately, funds were raised for a new education building, and construction got underway in 1961. Lewinsville Church was quickly adapting to meet the needs of a growing McLean community. Always looking outward, Lewinsville seeded yet another church. In 1960, Emmanuel Presbyterian of McLean was established with members from Lewinsville. In 1966, Lewinsville trustees took a first option on 4 acres of property adjacent to the church and paid the estate of Colonel Henry Eglin a little over $91,000 for the home and surrounding acres. A year went by as our members began a long process of trying to decide its best use. The first committee could not reach a consensus, so it was disbanded and a new committee appointed. The second committee decided a home for the elderly should be built on the site. All agreed, but before a single brick could be laid, a major change in leadership took place. A young Gary Pinder was called in 1968 as associate pastor. Pinder, on the left, was joined in 1970 by Reverend Bill Tatum, who was called as our senior pastor. The two of them began a long overdue effort to reach out to the rapidly growing McLean community. Finally, in May 1979, ground was broken for the Lewinsville retirement residence. Longtime member Marie Lewis provided crucial lay leadership during the entire process. And in September 1980, the residence opened at full capacity with a long waiting list. With the addition of the retirement home, Lewinsville's presence at the corner of Great Falls and Chainbridge Road nearly doubled in size, as is evident in this 1983 aerial view. Still another expansion, Lewinsville East, took place in 2003. And today, the expanded complex is home to 175 residents. For members of Lewinsville, though, mission outreach was just beginning. Lewinsville's annual summer mission project began in the late 1980s when the church sent out its first group of youth and adults to help the people of the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. SMP, as it is known to most, sends about 50 youth and adults on an annual trip to areas of the nation in need of willing hands to build, repair, and renovate. Our youth went to New Jersey to help Hurricane Sandy victims, and to New Orleans to assist in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, and to many places in between.
Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise God, all creatures here below.
Of course, there is far more to Lewinsville's mission than just summer work trips. Lewinsville is involved in numerous mission initiatives beyond its doors every year. While outreach to the community and to the world was pursued, another expansion of church facilities became necessary. Some 300 families contributed nearly $2.4 million over a 4-year period to expand the sanctuary, enlarge the narthex, install an elevator, renovate church offices, and build a separate music department. The growth in the music program can be attributed to a gifted musician, Jay Clark, who arrived in 1967. Under Jay's leadership, every aspect of the music program flourished. At one time, 160 persons participated in 11 choral and handbell choirs. When Jay retired in 2004, Dr. Ed Moore was called, and for 7 years, he built upon Jay's legacy. And every time there's been a change in music leadership, Carol Houston was there, expert with baton and keyboard, ready to step in and continue Lewinsville's standard of musical excellence. When Christian Education Director Susan Seahaver arrived in 1993, she instituted the workshop rotation model as the curriculum for youth in grades 1 through 6. Allison Lineberger followed and continued the teaching example of the CE leaders who preceded her, often employing unorthodox methods. In 2002, Emily Berman DeAndrea was called as Associate Pastor for Christian Formation. Her 16-year tenure made a lasting impact on every program that promoted mission outreach and community service. When Gary Pinder retired in 2005, Debbie McKinley was called. She immediately began to seek new ways to extend Lewinsville's mission into the surrounding community, including an interfaith coalition in the nearby Tyson's Urban Center. Scott Ramsey came to Lewinsville as an interim pastor in the fall of 2015 and served in that capacity until he was called as senior pastor in November 2018. The new program staff was completed when Pastor Scott and CE Director Allison Lineberger were joined by John Notaft, Director of Music Ministries, and Stated Supply Pastor for Christian Formation, Reverend Anna Marie Gronenboom. The new team is building upon a history of programs for community outreach, a history only partially told here, a history full of so much more. For example, in 2007, the opening of Chesterbrook Residences, an affordable assisted living facility established by Lewinsville in partnership with Temple Rodef Shalom and Emmanuel Presbyterian Church. The Reformed Institute, established by Lewinsville in 2002, to teach the Reformed tradition to a new generation. And the many active Christ Care groups. Also, our early pastoral callers from the 1980s who became today's Stephen ministers. The programs are diverse, the opportunities to serve, many. The Pilgrims and Pioneers of Lewinsville left a legacy that is our responsibility to continue. Those pilgrims, those pioneers in the faith, were always asking, what new, what better, what else can we do to serve our brothers and sisters who God has placed in our care? What can we do to be more like Chuck Sheffey, whose skilled hands left physical evidence of his many gifts throughout the church? Or Howard Saltzman, whose lecture series helped us engage the world in long overdue conversations? Or Marie Lewis, whose passion for building the Lewinsville retirement residence overcame every obstacle? Or Dr. Mark Andrews, parish associate, whose life was a walking reflection of what it means to be formed and living in the image of Christ? These are the pilgrims Dr. Gillespie had in mind when he reflected on Lewinsville's history at our 140th anniversary in 1986.
We must always be pilgrims and pioneers in the faith, those who are out ahead, blazing new trails, paving the way for those who will follow.
The only question remaining, where does the trail lead from here? The answer lies within the hearts and minds of those willing to pick up the mantle of the many who walked this way before us, willing to make their passion our own and blaze new trails, for that is our heritage, and this is our future.
Hagedorn there. Thank you. That was great. I enjoyed seeing it again for about the millionth time. And it is a wonderful reminder of who we are and what we've been and where we're going. Do you see our future? Do you see our future? It was staring you right there in the face. Before we invite Laura Gray of the Building Task Force to come up to describe the architect's renderings, I want to show you one more image. Can we go to the first one in the slide category? There we go. That's Clemens Storm. Not very many people know Clemens. He's asleep out here now behind us. But he was one of the pillars of the community and of the church in throughout the first half of the 20th century, frankly. Here he is just in 1961 as they were dedicating Heritage Hall. And they were not quite finished with it, but he was standing out there during the dedication. Someone took this picture of him standing there holding his hand on the cornerstone of the church. And looking down, you could see contemplatively at the ground, I suppose. And I've looked at that picture so many times and wondered what he must have been thinking on that day. I have gone through a series of thoughts about what that could have been. But I think he might have been thinking, how many times I wonder, will they renovate this building over the next 60 years? I can't wait to find out. Well, if that was his first question, if he came back today and he asked us about that, I think we could say, one of the elders might say, well, let's see. We painted the restrooms 3 times, I know, and we cleaned up the mildew in the basement, and we installed 4 new air conditioning units in the windows, 3 of which still work. I can tell you one thing, Clemens Storm would be more than ready to hear Lori Gray describe these architectural renderings for us today. Lori, come on.
Good afternoon. It's nice to see such a nice turnout today. It's a very exciting and transformative time in the life of our church. The renderings and floor plans that I'm about to show you were designed by LeMay Erickson Wilcox, our architect. They're based on the priorities we, as LPC members, communicated to them through the online survey, the group interviews, and town hall meetings. In the survey, for instance, 98% of those that participated said Heritage Hall is long overdue for a substantial renovation. The renderings and floor plans are part of a larger comprehensive campus master plan designed to meet Lewisville's ministry needs for the next 25 to 30 years. The master plan calls for certain areas of our church, like Heritage Hall, to be extensively renovated, while other areas will only be updated. But almost all parts of our church will be renovated or updated in some way. So let's get started with the new east entrance. The east entrance, a lot of us call that the parking lot entrance. Most of you probably entered through the church today through the parking lot entrance. All of our surveys told us that the east entrance needs to be more welcoming, more inviting, and needs to have improved accessibility to all levels of the building. As you enter in through the ground floor doors, you will enter into a space that is filled with natural light coming through the 8-foot windows. To the left will be the elevator that takes you to all 3 floors. To the far right will be a staircase that takes you to all 3 floors as well. And directly ahead will be a wide staircase that will gently rise and bring you to a broad landing and into the east lobby. This is a floor plan of the main level, and I would like to highlight a few of the significant changes on the floor plan. Plus, it'll also help better orient you for the renderings to come. We'll start right to left. This is the new east entrance that I just described. You see it's a round shape, so we're also calling that the rotunda entrance. We've also, next is the east lobby, which is to orient you just outside the chapel now. Meeting rooms have been reconfigured and redesigned. This one in particular is where the library is, and it's been enlarged in order to accommodate a large group and help alleviate some of the current pressures on the chapel space. But a movable wall has been included in that large space to allow for flexibility in the space. St. Andrew's Hall has been extended 7 feet towards the graveyard. The restrooms will be relocated here. Church offices will be reconfigured. We're adding additional church offices, but having them be within the same footprint. And the kitchenette will be extended and moved, will become a galley-style kitchen, and will be fully accessible to the church offices, to the meeting space, and also service St. Andrew's Hall. This is the new east lobby off the main floor. It will have state-of-the-art visual displays, guiding members and visitors alike to the events of the day, providing directional information, or just to sit comfortably while you wait for someone. Those doors that are there are leading into the chapel, and the hallway leads down to St. Andrew's Hall and onto the sanctuary. Probably the second most requested enhancement that we heard through the surveys was the relocation and redesign of the restrooms. It was. The restrooms will be relocated here, both convenient to the sanctuary, which is up to the left, and to St. Andrew's Hall, which is directly back. For orientation, on the right, those windows lead into the church offices. They're in a convenient location, but not conspicuous. An identical set of restrooms will be located and installed on the lower level as well. Those restrooms will service fellowship hall, the music room, and also the children's classrooms that don't have single-user restrooms. That brings me to the nursery and elementary school classrooms. Nursery and elementary school classrooms were on the top of everyone's list for renovation and improvement. The nursery will be located down on the lower level to improve security for our young ones. A lot of people in the survey said that they thought the nursery should be located on the main level, but security experts disagree. And so the nursery will be located on the lower level of Heritage Hall in the back. This is a rendering of an elementary school classroom, very different from what we have now. The door over on the left will be a single-user restroom. All of the classrooms downstairs will have single-user restrooms adjacent to them. The space will be updated with the latest audio-visual equipment and Wi-Fi. New ceilings, new lighting, new carpet, nice, bright space. These types of updates in the classroom space, and in addition to adding the all-floor elevators, will really help Lewinsville in its efforts to qualify the building for certification as an after-school care facility. It does not qualify today. Also on the lower level, Fellowship Hall will be given a fresh update. This is the floor plan of the third floor and the youth center. Again, we're going to go from right to left. On the right, you see the rotunda, which features the all-floor elevator, the staircase that also goes to all three floors, a center hallway that goes from east to west, dividing the space, a dedicated youth center, refurbished restrooms, reconfigured and redesigned meeting space that will facilitate both for the youth and also for adult meeting space. Our youth will have a dedicated youth center just for them. The rooms will have the latest audio, visual, and Wi-Fi. The kitchenette will be expanded. Here you see it has a Starbucks coffee bar kind of vibe to it. New furnishings, a movable wall. The space will really become what our youth today expect of space. Just down the hall from the youth center is the rotunda alcove. This will be a great space for breakout sessions for the youth, or for really anyone using the third floor meeting rooms, or even for waiting parents that are waiting for their youth from the youth program. You see on the right the elevator that's leading up to the third floor. Nice bright space, light coming through the windows, light coming from the cupola above. In this particular design, you see a skylight in the floor that's designed to allow the light from the cupola to come through the skylight into the east entrance down below. This is a rendering of St. Andrew's Hall. St. Andrew's Hall is in a unique location. At the intersection of worship and classroom space, it's a natural meeting spot. In this rendering, St. Andrew's Hall is extended towards the graveyard 7 feet in order to allow additional square footage for this heavily used and central location. Down the hall from St. Andrew's Hall will be that kitchenette I described that will be able to service again the administrative offices, the meeting rooms, and St. Andrew's Hall. Also near St. Andrew's Hall, the narthex and the sanctuary will be updated, new flooring, audio-visual equipment installed, and other updates in that space. There are a lot of changes in the master plan that aren't actually shown in these renderings and floor plans. Energy efficient central air system that will service the entire building. An outdoor landscaping plan, technology updates, and any thousands of new finishings, furnishings, lighting, ceilings, movable walls, all things that will really transform our space and help facilitate Lewin School's ministry for decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. And we all know that it's not possible to take all of your questions or answer all of the thoughts and reservations anybody might have about any of this design work today. We're going to try to schedule, after the 11 o'clock worship service, in a series of Sundays over the next 5 to 7 weeks, perhaps, that will give you an opportunity to come and look at the renderings closely and to ask the task force members any further questions that you might have about these renderings. Next, I want to invite David Foster to come up. He's a member of Session and a member of our Trailblazer Capital Campaign Committee. And David, now that you've seen the plans and renderings, have we taken a bold enough step forward? What do you think?
Not quite yet. We just have to all work together on this, and then we will do it. But I think that we have a very good plan for the future. And what I wanted to talk about was to ask there are a few recurring questions that come up as we talk about this plan. And one of the questions that I want to address as we talk about the future is this. If we love our church so much, why do we have to change it? And I think those of us, we all spend a lot of time in the church. We all love the church, otherwise we wouldn't be here. We're all comfortable there. We all have a lot of memories in the church. And as we think about this question, I think it's important to recognize that this is a church that is not just for us. It's not a church for the people that are in this room. It's a church for everyone. It's a church for people who we've never met before. And this church that we're going to be renovating and building and making fit for the future is a church for people who haven't even been born yet today. That's really what we're called to do, is to use our imaginations and envision and put our resources behind making this a church for the future. And I will tell you that I feel that's a complicated thing, right? Because I look at our church and I'm very comfortable there. I am a person who grew up in a church that's very similar to this one. It had similar cinder blocks. It even had similar bathrooms. In fact, I challenge you to think of a building that's not a church that has bathrooms like that. I don't know if you can. But there is a certain comfort level there. And for people like me and my wife, and I suspect many of us, we see that and we think this is what church is like. But the problem with that approach is that if that's the approach we take, then the church is just us. And it's just people like us who grew up in churches like this or in this church and who are comfortable with it. As other people come in, you have to imagine what they think. What we see is a gently loved and used and historic building that we all have shared memories in. Others might see as worn down, maybe even shabby in some ways. In a shiny area like Tyson's Corner, where we have tons of people moving in, and where our call is to get younger people, new generations of people in the building and worshiping with us and exploring their faith with us, we need to make sure that our appeal isn't an appeal to the way that things were. It's an appeal to a bold future, a crisp new future where all are welcome. And so I will say, even that church that I grew up in, with the cinder blocks and the bathrooms like this, it won't be producing people who have memories like this either, because I checked. They no longer have the cinder blocks. They have relocated their entrance and built a welcoming new entrance. They've painted, they have expanded their meeting space and brought in new technology. And if we don't do that, we're going to be left behind. So this is the time to take that bold step into the future, and I think we have the plan to do it. And as Roland asked, we are ready to take that step. We just need to all come together and do it together. So thank you.
You know, I think one thing is for sure: the current building does not reflect the vitality of this church. And we will address that. Now, a very important point in the program is an announcement of how much we have raised, where we are, where we stand today. Well, today, we received, and we're just now kicking off the campaign, but we received 30 individual pledges and gifts, which when totaled amount to $1.272 million. And some people think that maybe there's a heady hitter or two, whatever that means, in that group. And I am quick to say that there are several extraordinary, ordinary members who have made gifts in that group, but nothing that would amount to a heavy hitter, in my opinion. But that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for, if we could get at 100% participation by the entire congregation, because after all, we are all in this together, and this is what the church is, and what, most importantly, what the church is going to become. So we need as many people as possible. And I will tell you this, we don't have any categories of givers. All of the people who give to this campaign are major donors. Major donors. Every gift contributes to the success of this campaign, and all are important. Now, 1.272 is not bad, but Paul Phillips, head of our foundation, is here, the Louisville Presbyterian Church Foundation, to make, to make an announcement for us. Paul?
So good to see all of you here today. When Roland asked me to talk, he asked me to be short. I told Roland, I'm sorry, I can't be short, but I can be brief. And that's what I'm going to try to do this morning, or this afternoon. I don't know if you all went to either the first service or the second service this morning, but if you did, I hope you got to page 14. It's called Look Forward Together. And one is beautifully written. I don't know who wrote it, but it's really well written. And one of the things that's mentioned in here is our challenge. And that's what we're about to respond to. The foundation board is going to respond individually, as we will, and we will pledge to respond to that challenge. And I'm here to tell you that on behalf of the board of directors of the foundation, we are and have voted unanimously to provide up to $1 million in total from our endowment fund on a matching basis for donations and for pledges by members and friends of the church to assist in the funding of this capital campaign. And we hope that all of you will respond to that challenge as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Wonderful. So I listened to Paul, and for those of you who were around when the foundation was established in 1985, this is exactly why it was established, to build an endowment that could later participate meaningfully in a capital campaign or any kind of capital project that the congregation chose in the future. Now, and it feels good to know that the foundation has been able to do that at this point in time, and has been giving. It may also make possible the purchase of the Peters property and contributions to CRI and so forth. The endowment fund has continued to grow while making gifts in the last few years, growing while giving. What a novel idea! Incredible. When? Let's see. Pledges can be made in one lump sum or spread over 3 years. The years of 2019, 2020, and 2021. I have that people ask me, when should I start? Okay, today's fine. Today's fine. I don't know. But soon, because we expect probably to have to get a bridge loan before we start construction. And it will help if we can show the bank that we have a little bit of money already gathered. In the first week of June, we'll be giving the architect instructions to proceed with detailed drawings. And if we're lucky, with the plans completed and all permits obtained, groundbreaking will take place in 2020, early spring. And the building will be finished and we'll move in the summer of 2021. It's too long. I don't want to wait that long. But I'm afraid that the bureaucratic process pushes us into that sort of calendar. How much should I give? I resist giving a number every time I get that question. Everybody asks me that because the dollar amount is very personal and it depends on individual circumstances. Let me say this. $100 is equal to $100,000 in my view if it is given sacrificially. That's all we ask, is that people dig deep, know that this is for the future, and say, we're doing this. Don't know who's going to be here after I'm gone and what's going to happen here, but I want to be part of it. And so here's my sacrificial gift. That'll work. That works. And every pledge, by the way, is considered confidential. No one will know beyond a couple of people keeping the records. And the pastor, if he would like, so inclined to know. That's pretty good confidentiality. We can guarantee that. And if you want to remain anonymous, of course, absolutely you can. And I know that there are a couple of people, including one that already sent us a check, who wants to remain anonymous. So there we are. Now, we've also been asked if there will be naming rights or memorial opportunities for people available for donors. Roy Mitchell, another member of the Capital Campaign Committee, was going to take a couple of minutes now to explain what he has in mind. Excuse me, Roy. I want to introduce the other members of the Capital Campaign Committee. David Foster, if you just stand, that would be good. Bob Johnson, I want everybody to know who is really raising the money around here. Bob Johnson, Irene Foster, Ryan Ramsey, Wendy Meyerworm, Ali Mendenhall, Roy, of course, and Jim Edmondson, who cannot be with us today. But these are the guys and ladies. Roy Mitchell to talk with us about memorial opportunities.
Thank you, Roland. This won't take very long. I have two major points I want to make. Number one, everyone who donates, whether it's a modest amount or a very significant amount, will be recognized in some sort of plaque. I don't know exactly what it will be. Every single name of every single donor will be listed there so that no one will be omitted or left behind. Number two, we do have possible memorial opportunities for some of the more larger gifts. If people want to designate them in memoriam for someone, we are delighted to do that. So that's really all I have to say, but let me echo what Roland said. We have sacrificial giving from all of us, whatever that may mean to any one of us in our personal circumstances. We'll get there. Thank you.
Now to the frequently asked questions. The Building Task Force has pulled together several of the most frequently asked questions, and believe me, there have been many. And I've asked them to come forward and assist me with the answers. The members of the Building Task Force have been involved in this. You'll probably know they're the ones answering the questions. Many of them have been involved for 4 years. It's incredible. But the process of defining the priorities and laying it out has been a long one, and I hope productive in the final analysis. You met Lori Gray earlier. The rest are coming up now are Adrian Steele, John Bowen, Vernon Gale, Wendy Meyerworm, who's on both committees, Bob Clark, Michelle Gottke, Patty Gunter, and Jim Edmondson are also on the committee, but they are absent today. John Boyd is the chair of a separate entity. It's called the Building Construction Committee. Very creative, Bob. I don't know, did you give him that name? Yeah. His team will oversee the actual construction on a daily basis once we get started. The frequently asked questions are, $7 million? Really? Where's it going to come from? Where's that question?
He didn't say that he had answers to these. He was just asking questions.
Yeah. No, the other part of that I almost forgot, thank you, Adrian, is that why are we spending so much on ourselves? Well, we aren't spending it on ourselves. We're not building some crystal cathedral and equipping it with country club type comforts. We never have. I don't know if you've watched the PowerPoint presentation, you know that's true. We never have and never will. That's not what we're about. Instead of that old thing, Sibi said alias. The old Latin phrase, not for ourselves, but for others. And that's what I think of when somebody says, why are we doing this for ourselves? We've never done it for others. This is the place where our faith is nurtured and where young minds are shaped and new Christians are formed to go out into the world to nurture the faith of others. That's the way it always has been. So it's in a way, it's a very easy question to answer. We just need to keep this place, which is God's house, in good enough shape to enable us and those who follow us to continue to serve Him as our predecessors did. Well, let me see. Let me go into another question before I take too much time with that one. If we don't meet our financial goal, what are we going to do? Is there a plan B? Adrian, where are you? Right here. Mm-hmm. Is there plan B?
Yes, I am plan B. We are very hopeful that we'll meet the goal and have some confidence. A point that Roland's made to us is 2.7 million or something was raised back in 1989, 90.
2.377.
2.377 was raised. And if you inflate that to where we are today, it's about
5.254.
So, not that we're being precise, but the point is, this isn't, what we're trying to raise now is a little bit more proportionally wider adjusted inflation than that congregation raised back in 1990. So we view it as a doable thing. But if we don't reach it, you will see on page 13 of your handout, there are the priorities that were set by the congregation in the various surveys that we took, and they are listed there. That's sort of the right now plan B. But again, we remain hopeful we won't have to go to plan B. If that happens and we're short by some amount, some material amount, we will, the task force will look at it with the architects and see what we can do. Generally follow that priority listing. Maybe some adjustments, recommend those to the session. Input from the congregation about what priorities we need and what we want to do, because there are some things you can do. Some things may be 10, 15 years down the road. That may just be how it plays out. Never coming out of the master plan. It doesn't all have to be done right now. We're hopeful it can. So that's pretty much how we would do it. Is that right?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. It is expensive, but I was thinking about this yesterday. If we had to replace our sanctuary, that'd be a $20 million project, maybe 25. If we had to replace Heritage Hall from the ground up, that would be 15 to 20 million. If we needed to replace the mats this afternoon, that would be a minimum of $2 million, depending on what we decided to put there. It is not 1988 anymore, it's now 2019, and the numbers are huge, and they challenge us, but we know we are up to it. I don't see a kitchen in these renderings. Why not? John Bowen, where are you? Did you take that one? The new kitchen that was supposed to be in Fellowship Hall.
There is not a kitchen in the phase one that we're doing now, nor are the columns in the Fellowship Hall being moved over for greater visibility. Excuse me. Both of these items were priority items in the congregational survey, but they did not rise to the level of the other items that we are including, and so they will be done at a later date. They're postponed, not forgotten.
Well, wait a minute. What about storage? Places for the wheelchair, the linens,
very good question. Storage is very important to the church. The architects that we're working with, Neil Roseberry has done over 22 churches, and his assistant, Bobby Solio, has done over 20 churches, so they're very well aware of storage. And Patty Gunter and Michelle Gottke are leading a team, head up a team that's going to make sure there's storage for all of the various items that all of your ministry would choose.
Thank you. You need another question?
No?
Okay. Wait.
I'm interrupting. Let me,
Adrian, it's still Adrian, by the way.
on the kitchen in particular, we have enough funds in maintenance reserve and maintenance operating accounts that we can separately from this task force fund an updating, if you want, of the kitchen, a good clean, a good everything. There was a couple months ago, a consultant came in, someone for a different reason in kitchen things, and was looking at it and said, your kitchen's basically fine. Everything works. Maybe the stove might have to be adjusted or replaced in a few years, but as a kitchen, it's fine. So instead of replacing that now in this phase one, and even part of this task force, the facilities committee is going to look at redoing, basically updating it to be a kitchen that we want, but operationally it's fine. So something will happen with the kitchen in that regard. Sorry.
Thank you. That's beautiful.
I'm done now.
What about security for the entire building, Bob? Have anything on that?
Sure. Well, security. Well, security is always a big question. Actually, when I arrived here the first time, back in 2001, security was a hot item for the administrator, and we wanted to determine how we could secure the building during the day and in the evening. And it came up as part of the task force and the questions that we were trying to address, and it's going to be incorporated in our plans. There's a lot of new technology. There's a lot of surveillance technology. I mean, we are all aware over the past few years how security is important to us, and yet we want to have a comfortable environment that we can live in and not feel that someone's necessarily looking over our shoulder every minute. But we want to feel confident that our children are protected, the church is protected, and we can worship in comfort. So security will be a part of it. There's all kinds of interesting things that they do now with getting into a building. You can have punch codes. You don't have to duplicate keys to everybody. I think everybody who has a church key, raise your hand. I think you're probably got 90% of the church that has a key to get in. So we're not going to keep you out. It's just that we're probably going to come up with new and more modern approaches to security in the building.
Okay, thank you. Are we going to be LEED certified or environmentally sensitive with the building and landscape? A lot of people want to know about that. Vern Gale. You left. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. For those of you who aren't familiar with the term LEEDs, stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, which basically is a format for doing ecologically smart things for the country and for the environment. So, are we going to be LEED certified? Not really. We've actually been doing the LEEDs kind of thing for a number of years, with new lights we put in, some air conditioners and things like that. So we're kind of underway. And let's see, we also have, I'll get my head together here. Susan Bartram and Maya Foster are leading a project for Earth Care Congregation. So as part of that process, they're also thinking about eco things and environments. And we've got projects underway for that as well. And as was alluded to earlier, as we build this project, carpeting comes into play, lights, of course, wall coverings, paint, low utility, all of that's going to be part of what we do, but it's not LEED certification. LEED certification would probably cost us about another $700,000 if we try to do it. So we aren't going to be exactly certified. There's many levels. It's bronze, bronze, gold, silver, and platinum, and you get points. So that's how you get that far. But we're still going to be doing most of the things we need to do, given the constraints that we have with the building. So we're headed there.
Thank you. Appreciate that. A lot more to consider, obviously, as we go forward. And the task force is meeting again this Wednesday night. I just got a question, and if you have questions that you want the task force to take a look at, please write them down on the 3x5 card that's at the table where you are. We'll pick them up after the luncheon, and we'll address them as fast as we can. And if you want us to respond directly to you, just put your name on it, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll just address it in a general form later. We're about done, and we really need to because we have another event scheduled here with the choir later this afternoon. So I want to ask Courtney Nuzzo, Director of the Louisville Retirement Residence, to come forward. She has something. Where's Courtney? I thought Sore. And Donna, wonderful Donna the chef.
Good afternoon. Well, thank you all so much for coming to the dining room here at the Louisville Retirement Residence. I think the board, we now have a good way to get everybody to our annual meeting. If we feed you, you will come. And because of that, just so you all are aware, this is the Louisville Retirement Residence. We are the largest and I believe longest mission project of the Louisville Presbyterian Church. We're Section 8 affordable housing property, so we serve the lower income senior folks in Fairfax County. What makes us different than many of the other programs is our meal program. 40 years ago when we were started, the board had the insight and the church had the generosity to start Friends of the Louisville, which allows us to provide support for folks for that program. Now, fortunately, the board does not rely on me to cook for 150 people every day, because otherwise we would have all had pizza today. No, it is through my dear coworker Donna Bolton, who prepared the meal today. So Donna's especially compassionate and interested in her food, okay, and in serving and making sure everybody enjoys a good meal, which I think you all found today. But we also participate in other community activities here at the Louisville. We participated in the Chocolate Festival at the end of January, and Donna made just a ton of chocolate and we sold out. But the interesting thing here is you never know where your mission is going to take you. Because while we were there, we had about a dozen people stop and ask where our shop was. So, we're now part of Chocolatiers. But along that, in terms of other mission, I just wanted to bring attention to the cookies on the table. They are from Cameron's Chocolate and Coffee in Fairfax Circle. They are also another nonprofit, and they employ adults with disabilities. And they were started by a family here in McLean with a child who had a disability. I would strongly encourage you all to participate in their program. We give the cookies out on the 1st of every month for everybody who pays their rent on time. A little carrot. That's it. Thank you all so much for that.
Now, to put the final cap on this, let's get our Pastor Scott up here for some closing remarks and hopefully a benediction.
Let's give another round of applause to Courtney Nuzzo and Donna and the staff here at RR. And friends, we also want to give a round of applause and appreciation to Roland McElroy and the Building Task Force. Some of you know how much time these folks have been giving to this project over the last years. And a huge amount of effort, energy, time, coordination, discussion, arguing, planning, all kinds of things. These folks have been working hard for the church, and you all are seeing some of the fruits of that today. As Roland mentioned, there will be a number of opportunities for feedback and input along the way, including the 3x5 cards on the tables, so that the feedback loop is always going about the project. We are at a very important and exciting time in the life of Louisville Presbyterian Church. As I've been thinking about this project and some of the questions that Roland was talking through, it feels in a very profound way that Louisville has never been as important as it is today in the world, in our community, in our society. The mission and ministry of this congregation has never been as important as it is. And you all are all about that. You all are how we do that. And so this project, it is time for this project. It's long overdue. And so it's exciting to be getting underway. Thank you all very much for giving your time this afternoon and for your energy and your fellowship, your questions, your feedback. This is an important time, but it is also an exciting time, and it's a fun time to be part of Louisville. Friends, let us gather our hearts as we prepare to depart, and we close with prayer. Let us pray. You do not call your church to exist for itself, O God. You have called your church in every generation and every place into existence in order to worship and glorify you, in order to enjoy you, and in order to serve your world. You know the brokenness of our world in so many ways. The hurts that are in this community, in this neighborhood, in our society, in our world, the violence, the poverty, the polarization, the alienation. We give you praise, O God, for calling us into your church at a time such as this, for calling us to be part of your people, bearing your love and your grace and your mercy and your justice and your truth with us as we go through our lives, as we engage in our various ministries. And so we ask that you would bless this congregation in its ministry. We pray for this upcoming capital campaign and ask that you would use it in order to accomplish what you want for this congregation. So guide us, help us to serve you with confidence, with joy, with humility, and with praise every step of the way. All of these things we pray in the living name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Praise God. Peace.